our problems, or we blame us, and this is what the problem that I got. I can never face up to my problems. I'm getting better now, but a lot of the times I'm blaming my for this or the children or whatever. I'm not coming to grips with myself that it was my problem. So I'm trying to hide it. That's my protective mechanism for me. So I've got to acknowledge, no, Ron, that was you. And I do come around after a little while. I'll come around and say, yeah, that was right, and then I'll go and ask for forgiveness and what have you. But for me, that's my weakness, is blaming, denying that I'm the cause, and putting the blame on others. And the other one is forgetting. We forget it, we suppress our emotions, we forget, oh, it's okay, he hasn't really wounded me, it's no big issue. But yes, we have been hurt and we have been wounded, and we push it down there. And remember what they say, if you get a balloon, you can push it down in the water. Once you let go, what's going to happen to that balloon? It's going to shoot back up. It's going to come back up. And unfortunately, a lot of us, that's what we do with all of the pain and all the stuff that has happened to us. We push it down in those areas of our heart, and we suppress it down there. And then when a situation happens that triggers it, we explode. It's got to come up somewhere. And it's knowing how to deal with that situation when it starts coming up. Now, denial hinders forgiveness. We cannot forgive what we cannot acknowledge. So if I'm denying something has happened, if I haven't got a truth about what has really taken place, I'm going to hide it, and I won't be able to forgive that person. Does that make sense? Now, this is really important. We need to look at the truth of what has happened and work through the process of that pain and that suffering that we have gone through, so that we can get healing in that situation. Now, the second is hardening of the heart. How do we harden our heart? Now, these are some scriptures. How blessed is the man who fears always, but he who hardens his heart will fall into all forms of calamity. So it's really important. Jesus, throughout the Bible, has so many times said, don't harden your heart. Remember the Israelites, they would go into the promised land and enjoy God's blessings and fruitfulness because they hardened their hearts. And how did they harden their hearts? It was through grumbling, through complaining, being critical, that they hardened their heart. And when we harden our heart, then we can't hear the voice of God. We find it difficult to come into His presence. Christianity becomes boring. We don't get fed by the Word of God when we read the Word of God. Then we become more slaves than actually sons and daughters of God. We fall into having to do things, complying with all these other things, instead of enjoying God's grace and God's blessings and being free in what God has given us. Do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me, as in the day of trial in the wilderness. That's what happened to the Israelites. We can harden our hearts through anger, through blaming God, and this is a big problem I find, is that whenever situations happen, why God? How did you allow this to happen to me? You are supposed to be a loving God. You're supposed to be a caring God. But why did you allow this to happen to me? Why is my son doing this, or my daughter doing that? Why have they gone astray? Why did you allow this calamity, this disaster? Why did you allow this separation? Lord, aren't you there for me? So we blame God and we get angry at God. Not only at God, and the other big problem is getting angry at self. Now that's one of the biggest problems is forgiving self. That's such a hard thing to do. Is that we're so angry and so critical and so judgmental at ourselves that we really, the bottom line is that we hate ourselves. We don't like ourselves and the way that God has made us and what God has done for us. And deep down in our heart, we've got this anger towards ourselves. Self-pity can harden our hearts. Resentment can harden our hearts. Refusing to forgive. Holding on to bitternesses of past offences and things that have happened in our hearts. And wanting the other person to pay for what they have done for me. I'll get you back. You deserve punishment. You deserve, hell, whatever it may be. You're cursing them. And that also hardens our hearts. So we need to release those people. We need to bless them. And we need to move on. Inner vows can harden our hearts. I will never forgive. I'll get even. I'll make them pay for what they have done to me. Those vows that we said, those inner words that have been formed in our hearts. And Jesus said that we've got to forgive from the heart. It's so important to forgive from the heart. And ask God to give you the grace to be able to forgive from the heart. Now, the other way is that we try to protect our hearts from pain and from suffering. And what we do is that we bury the pain. The worst thing that you can do for your health is to deny and to suppress and to block your emotions, whether they are good or bad. This makes them extremely toxic in our lives. Burying our emotions, pushing them down. It causes so much pain and so much mental. A lot of mental illnesses are a result from deep wounds and hurts that have occurred in our early childhood, or pain and trauma that we have had in our life, and they're coming out. That's why so many people today have got so much, illnesses and psychological problems that are rooted deep down in all that pain that we've suppressed and down in there. And it comes out in these forms of, sleepless nights. I'm not saying that this is, all of it, but at times, depression and anxieties and all these fears and all these psychological problems that we have are a result of the pain that we weren't able to deal with properly as growing up. Angers, rages and tantrums that we throw. Withdrawing, isolating and hiding ourselves. That's what we do. We can have this cold heart as well. And it's a cold anger. I'm not going to speak to you anymore. I'm just going to keep silent. I'm not going to speak. And it's a form of cold love. And so we shut ourselves off. We cut ourselves off. We put walls up. And we don't allow anyone else to enter into that room. Controlling. That's the other way that we can protect our hearts from avoiding pain. Building those walls up. We become perfectionists in everything that we do. Performance orientation. And we become workaholics and workaholics and workaholics.
In Romans chapter 2, verse 5, it says, "If you have a hard and stubborn heart, and so you are making your own punishment even greater in the day when God's anger and righteous judgment will be revealed."
Hard and stubborn heart. Yeah, so it's important to keep our hearts soft so that we can empathise with others, that we can feel the pain of others, that we can relate to others, because a lot of the times we're relating superficially. We're not really connecting with the other person. It's only a superficial relation. God